Okay, let's say the prayers first. Dumba jomden de dejen shewa ta jomba yanda wa nzobe sanje riwa da shabsu demba dewara shewa jigden jemba jebu duwe kalo gyurwa lana meba lada menam je dumba sanje jomden de bejawa jaja duwa la janze lo chodo japsu che o dumba jomden de dejen shewa Jajumba Yandaba Zobe Sanje Rigwa Dan Shabsu Demba Devara Shiba Jigden Jemba Jibu Duve Kalo Gyurwa Lana Meba Lada Menanje Dumba Sa Bejawa Shaja Duva La Chaze Lo Chodo Japsu Che Wo Dumba Chumden De Dishin Shewa Jajumba Yandaba Zobe Sanje Rigwa Dan Shabsu Demba Devara Shiba Jigden Jemba Jebu Debe Kalo Gyurwa Lana Meba Lada Minamje Demba Sanje Jumden De Bejawa Shaja Duba La Jaze Lo Jodo Japsu Che Ho Sanje Choda Soje Chonama La Chanshu Bado Tani Japsu Je Tagi Chushin Jibe Sonama Je Dola Penche Sanje Dubara Sho Sanje Choda Soje Chonama La Janju Bado Tani Japsu Che Tagi Chushin Jibe Sonama Je Dola Penche Sanje Dubara Sho Sanje Choda Soje Chonama La Janju Bado Tani Japsu Che Tagi Chushin Jibe Sonama Je Dola Penche Sanje Dubara Sho. Okay, good morning. How are you? Now that the stay at home restriction is lifted, I'm wondering whether any of you have braved and ventured outside. It has been quite a pleasant day in the past or this last week. So anyway, I hope all of you are well and doing your best to put into practice what we have discussed so far. So last week we discussed on the topic of emptiness. That was very hard going, even for me to explain. So we will continue from there. So just to recap, so we talked about how the self-grasping or this misconception of this personal identity is at the root of self-cherishing attitude, and as a result of that, then we experience all kinds of sufferings. So now we are talking about what is this self-grasping or this ego. So there was a question on the difference between let me rephrase. What is the difference between Buddhist understanding of ego and concept in psychology. So in Tibetan, or not really Buddhist, Tibetan. So Tibetan, I was going through the text to see where ego, this terminology, this term ego was used. But there are, it was used for two different things. So sometimes ego was used when it was actually self-cherishing attitude about the self-importance. And then sometimes you see that ego is used as interchangeably with the self, the ego clinging or the self grasping itself. That misconception, the wrong view of how exist. So this absolute personal identity. So that's the difference. But of course, in psychology, it is completely different. So psychology, ego is used, I think, when explaining Freud's concept of personality, this personality theory, Freud's personality theory, whereby, according to Freud, that our psyche is made up of three different kind of layers of psyche or the mind. So one is at the unconscious level, so that is id. So they talk about id, ego, and then superego. So id is the unconscious urges, mainly driven by this pleasure principle. It's always wanting to what do you call, always after pleasure and always wants instant gratification. And then of course there is this superego which comes in. This is like the moral principle, whereby when the desire, the urges comes, then the superego will say that no, you cannot do that. This is not right. This is not morally unacceptable. And ego is the mediator. So ego will find a way to negotiate between the id's urges and the superego's restriction. So in that sense, ego is like a mediator and also a rational one. Just to give an example, so if we pass by a shopping mall and then if we see a nice thing, so of course when Freud talks about this, it's mainly driven by this sexual desire and aggression. But if we apply to other things, like when we see a beautiful thing in a shopping mall, so ego, the id would want that. But of course, superego will say that no, you cannot have it. You cannot just grab and take away that. That will be stealing. Then you will be arrested for stealing. So the ego will try to negotiate, mediate between these two. So ego may say that, okay, since ego, you want this, and superego says, there's a way. I'll find a way. That is, you pay for it. So in that sense, ego is not really bad, whereas in the Buddhist term, ego is the root of all our problems. So there is this difference or the distinction between Freud's ego and what we have been seeing in the Buddhist texts. And then another question is, how do we know? How can we measure that we have improved in terms of reducing self-cherishing attitude? How do we know that? How do we measure that? Remember, in the past, all that 100 verses is all about the flaws or the disadvantages of the self-cherishing attitude. How self-cherishing attitude results into us suffering. So after going through all that, we are supposed to, if not uproot our self-cherishing attitude, but at least reduce that, at least replace or more inclined towards other cherishing attitude. So when we meditate, when we contemplate on the disadvantages of self-cherishing attitude, remember in the Lama Choba it says that all the miseries come from self-cherishing attitude, whereas all the good things stem from cherishing others. So when we go through each and every instances, and remember we are supposed to examine and analyze our own experience in life, how self-cherishing is at the root, how self-cherishing attitude, how this self-centered attitude plays a role in our disagreement with others, quarreling with our partners, anger, jealousy, all that afflictive emotions, how self-cherishing attitude give rise to that. So when we bring in our own experience, then there will come a time that we are so convinced that self-cherishing attitude is the culprit, is the main culprit. And then we will make a decision or determination that I will not let self-cherishing attitude take control of my life. I will try to counter this attitude. So when we do that, slowly, there will be an improvement. Of course, the progress will be incremental, but there will be a progress. So how do we know that? I think there are two ways to measure that. The actual one is really seeing whether your self-cherishing attitude itself has reduced. Just that itself. So that one, I think that one way to measure that is that when somebody hurls you a harsh word, when somebody disagrees with you, what is our first thought? If our thought is, he or she must be going through such a stressful event, that's why that person is unreasonable, that's why that person is saying all this. If we are able to divert our attention towards the other person, if we are able to focus on if we are able to direct our concern to the other person, then that is indicative that we have improved, because it's no longer how dare he or she says this to me, how dare he is acting like this, how dare he is arguing with me, how dare he cannot accept my view. So generally, this is our view. Why we get angry is because, like, how dare, I am right. So when we contemplate or meditate on this, then there will come a time whereby when someone says nasty things at you, instead of getting angry at the person, we will be able to generate kindness, compassion, because that comes from thinking about what the person is going through. So that is one indication that we have progress, we have improved. Another one is if we see that the results, the consequences of anger, such as the consequences of self-cherishing attitude, such as anger, hatred, jealousy. If you see all these afflictive emotions are now, or let's put it this way, if we find ourselves less prone to these afflictive emotions, then we can say that, oh, my self-cherishing attitude has somehow reduced, because all these needs, that foundation of self-cherishing attitude. Anger arises because of our self-cherishing attitude. We have this attachment to us. We get angry when somebody says nasty things to our friends, our family members, people whom we care, because we have this attachment towards people who we consider as my people. So I think that these are the two ways to measure. So now you can check for yourself. We have been going through this text for the last, 5 months. Each week we are supposed to reflect and try to identify incidences of self-cherishing at the root of our experience, our incidents. So if we have diligently followed that, if we have diligently done that, so we should be able to see some progress. So that's I think the way to measure. And I always say this. So many of us have been coming to center and attending Dharma classes for many years. But you have to, every now and then, you have to check whether what has it done to you, whether you have changed or whether you are the same person. If you find yourself that, oh, there has been progress, I am a changed person, then there is reason to be happy and rejoice. That means the time and effort we have invested in coming to Dharma classes had served its purpose. In contrast, if you find yourself the same old, grouchy, angry, short-tempered person, despite all that years of attending Dharma classes, then it is unfortunate. Then whatever you have learned have remained at intellectual level. Nothing has really gone in. Yeah, if you are asked about concepts in Buddhism or Buddhist philosophy, you may be very fluent in explaining each and every concepts, but nothing has gone in. So that is sad. So we have to remember that, why we are studying. We are coming to Dharma classes not to become a great scholar. We wanted to prepare ourselves. We wanted to achieve happiness in this life, as well as to ascertain a good rebirth in future lives. So that has to come from practicing. That cannot come simply listening to Dharma. Of course, understanding, listening, studying is the first step. It is very important. So if you find that there is no much progress, but it is not that you should be discouraged, but use this as a wake-up call. Okay, I have wasted enough time. Now I should try to put them into practice while I am alive. You can tell yourself that it is not too late. I'm still alive. I still have time. I'm not on my deathbed. So that's important. Sometimes we forget the main purpose. The main purpose becomes a peripheral thing. And then all this, especially there are people who are very much, obsessed with technical things and all these nuances, and they are so, interested or absorbed in numbers. What are the 4 things? What are the 5 things? What are the 7 things? But forget the real point. So that's what I wanted to highlight before we go into that. So now, so last week we talked about the self-cherishing attitude. No, sorry, we talked about self-grasping. So we talk about there is no inherent self. So to us, it appears that there is inherent nature in its own, by its own. But remember, through the analysis, like when we try to generate the strong sense of I, we always perceive or sense that there is I that is separate from our aggregates. But then we say that when we, let's say, if I have headache, my head is having this, pain. We will say, I am having headache. When I burned my hand, we'll say, I'm burnt. When somebody hit us, person hits here, we may say, I am hit by so and so. Even though we say this, that because part of our physical body is hit or hurt, we say, I am hurt. And likewise, when we are agitated, when we are angry, actually the anger is kind of activated. There are many emotions. When one of the emotion is activated, we say that I am angry. Even though we say this, but when we think of I, we always feel that sense that there is that I is nothing to do with our aggregates. There is something solid there. So that's what it is all about. There is no such thing. And then we talk about, since if there is no inherent existence, then does it mean that nothing exists? They say no, things do exist, but they exist independent on causes and conditions or its parts. So now we are going through this dependent origination, how things exist. So let's look at the verse 109. Tsebe tuze muna yome kyang tingring pukdu gyushin tsupadar mari sola rangshin mena yang shera sumji chupa sewar chas. When in feverish delirium, although there is no darkness at all, one feels as if plunged and trapped inside a deep dark cave. So too, although ignorance and so on lack intrinsic reality, I will dispel ignorance by means of the three wisdom. So you see here the image. Do you know where this is from? This is from the movie The Beautiful Mind. I have a note, but I forgot to bring it here, so never mind. So this is about this, one of the, I don't remember the name now, is a famous mathematician who is a Nobel laureate, and he was suffering from schizophrenia. And the two main symptoms of schizophrenia is delusion and hallucination. So here, when this professor, when he was in university, he was hallucinating. The picture here, these are all hallucinations. To him, there is this his roommate. There was no roommate actually. It is just his hallucination. And then he thinks that there are agents coming after him. So that's delusional, paranoid. So this is similar to, let me rephrase that. So when person is suffering from schizophrenia, the person perceives all these images. And to that person, all these hallucinations seem so real. But to other people, they don't perceive that, they don't see that, there is no such thing. So here, that's what it is talking about. When in feverish, is another example. When you have high fever and then you started to have this kind of delirium, whereby you will experience that you are in some deep, pit of darkness, as if you were plunged and trapped inside a very deep and dark cave. So here, what it is saying is, this is an example, analogy. So in reality, there is no such dark cave. The person is not trapped in the dark, inside a deep dark cave. But that's what the person perceives. So it's saying that even though there is no such thing, but to the person who is having that delirium sees this. Likewise, even though ignorance has no inherent existence, ignorance itself is labeled. Ignorance itself comes into being dependent on other conditions, parts and conditions. There is no inherent existence. So ignorance itself is a subjective existence. There is no objectively, ignorance does not objectively exist. Likewise, the results of the ignorance, like anger, hatred, jealousy, all these afflictive mental states are also empty of inherent existence. But they still give rise to suffering. If we have ignorance, then all these afflictive emotions will arise, and as a result, we will experience suffering. So that's why, even though all this ignorance and afflictive emotions, all this mental state has no inherent existence, but they do exist, but they do function. So because of that, despite their lack of inherent existence, we still need to eradicate the ignorance. We still need to counter all these afflictive emotions. So here says, I will dispel ignorance by means of the three wisdoms. So three wisdoms is the wisdom of understanding or listening. We call it Tösam Komsum. So listening, understanding derived through listening or studying. And then whatever you have heard or whatever you have read, you cannot just leave it there. If you just leave it there, 2 days later, we have forgotten. So we have to contemplate on it. We have to think over and over. And then we will have a greater understanding, in-depth understanding. So once we have that in-depth understanding, then we should meditate on it. So these are the understanding or the wisdom derived from three different means. One is listening or studying, one is through contemplation, one is through meditation. So that's why here, as I mentioned earlier, studying, the first one, the wisdom or understanding derived from listening Dharma or studying, is very, very important. It says, Töbe chunam sheba yur, töbe digle dobarche, töbe töma yimba pong, töbe nyanyindeba top. So that means that, first of all, when you study or listen to Dharma, what will happen is, you will gain the insight, you will gain the wisdom, what to be abandoned and what to be cultivated. So before you come to Dharma, many of us don't know, we don't even know what are the 10 non-virtues. What are we, what we are to abandon, what we are to refrain from. We don't know that. After studying, we know what to be abandoned, what to be cultivated. So that's what it's saying. Now that you understand this, what to be cultivated, what to be abandoned or eradicated, what will happen is, we will work towards refraining from negative actions, because we know through listening and studying, we know about the, how karma works. Since we all aspire to be happy, we need to cultivate the causes and conditions for that. Since we all do not want to experience misery, we need to work towards refraining from ourselves in committing all the causes and conditions that give rise to misery and suffering. So that will follow. So once we have the understanding, then we will engage in practicing the refraining from non-virtue. And also because of your understanding, we will not fritter away our time in meaningless pursuits. We realize that whatever, all these pursuits, especially the pursuits of materialism, we now understand that that does not help. First of all, it does not last. It's very uncertain. A person can be so wealthy today or this morning, but by end of the night, end of the day, person may lose everything. And look at the situation now. How many people are queuing to this what do you call the free food? I think recently they reported that the queue was so long. So those people, I was told that many of them are driving big cars. So now you are queuing for free food. So all this, after studying, we realize that these endeavors are not that meaningful. It does not help in our happiness in this very life, and of course, not to mention about our future life. It does not guarantee a good future. So all this, when this happens, we will be very selective. We will prioritize the important pursuits, the meaningful ones, which help us in this very life as well as prepare us for our next life. And then eventually what happens? If we do that, eventually we will be liberated. We will be free from samsara. We will be free from the clutches of ignorance and karma. So that's why it says studying is very, very important. And it says that Toba minse chome. Toba timu minse chome kumbula so mekir norge cho. And the good thing about understanding, once you listen and when you have that understanding, the good thing is that, first of all, it says that understanding through listening or studying is like a lamp that dispels the darkness of ignorance. That is very true. You are no longer ignorant now. You know on that topic. So it is like the lamp that illuminates your darkness. And then it says that it is the best possession, because other worldly possessions, it can be robbed or stolen by other people. Whereas your understanding of Dharma or your understanding of any topic, that one, it will always stay with you. Nobody can steal from you or us. So that's why it is very important. Here, even though it talks about the importance of dispelling the ignorance, it's also implicitly telling us that it is very important to study and then don't leave the understanding there, contemplate, and then meditate. That's the way to progress through these levels of understanding. So now verse 110 and 111. Romo kengi gebe lulangde Jena Tade Rangshin Maji Mu, Maje Tsokbe Nyembe Chajungna, Gewe Simji Dunga Sewadar, Ledan Kunde Yonsu Chebana, Chikdan Tade Rangshin Mena Yang, Nangnan Dabur Shula Kijikje, Yoyo Dabur Tedu Nazoyong, Nawanzamdo, Langdor Chawa Angs. So these two verses, first of all, the first verses is another example of how things do not exist from their own side, but can still function. So the analogy here is that when a musician plays a song with his violin, if probed, there is no intrinsic reality to the sound. Yet melodious tunes arise through aggregation of unprobed facts and soothe the anguish that lies in the people's heart. So like the way we analyze self, where is I, we cannot find I either outside of our body or amongst the parts of our body. Likewise, when we probed a melodious song, we hear it, it is so soothing, it is so nice to hear. But if we probed that, where is this one? The one that suits us, the one that is so nice to our ears. Which is the one? Is it the notes? Is it the person doing? Or is it just the string? And also there are instances. Is it the first sound? Or is it the second sound? So when we analyze that, when we probed that, we cannot pinpoint to one instances of sound or one thing that this is the melodious sound. But it still produces. So that shows that even in music, it does not exist independently. There is nothing absolute, there's nothing solid about it. It is all dependent on this aggregation of other parts. So this music, this melodious sound, is produced when all the components, for example, the note itself, and then the string, that wooden particular shape, and then the person who is moving from one string to other string. All this, the combination of all this give rise to that melodious sound. So likewise, when karma and its effects are thoroughly analyzed, though they do not exist as intrinsically one or many, vividly appearing, they cause the rising and cessation of phenomena. Seemingly real, they experience birth and death of every kind. So within this mere appearance, I will follow the ethical norms. So likewise, this is now the actual point. So likewise, karma. Remember we talk about karma also like inherent nature. Karma also like intrinsic identity. When you probe, let's say, our own experience, what we are now. So which is the one? Is it the first instance of our karma? Or the second one? Third one? Or is it just the action, physical action? Or is it just the mental action? So if we, dissect that, there is nothing solid that we can point to as karma. But karma still functions. Things still come to being. things still cease to exist. This is all because of causes and conditions happening. Because causes and conditions arise, it gives rise to something else. Because causes and condition arises, decay or the ceasing also happens. So, vividly appearing, they cause the rising and cessation of phenomena. Seemingly real, they experience birth in all this. So, even though these are all mere appearance, these are conventionally existing phenomena, but we still have to follow the ethical norms. We cannot just dismiss that, these are all empty of inherent existence. We don't have to abide by that. That is wrong. Sometimes when you talk to people, people say that, this, then yeah, actually there's nothing inherent existent. As if, since there is no inherent existence, we don't have to care about it. We don't have to give consideration. So that is wrong, it's saying. So even though all this appear as dependent or let's put, even though these are inherently non-inherently existent, it does not exist inherently, but they still function. If you engage in negative actions, there will be consequences. So within that mere appearance, we still need to follow the ethical norms. We still need to abide by the law of karma. So verse 112. Chuyi tikbe pumba kenwa na, chudik tangbe pumba making shing, tamala so rere mayime, tende sobe pumba kanwa tars. So this following two verses is also highlighting how things are dependently arisen. So the example is that when drops of water fill a vase, it is not the first drop that fills it, nor the last drop or each drop individually. Through the gathering of dependent factors, the vase is filled. So here is the similar analysis. We are probing. When we say that, the vase is filled, so what do you mean? Are you saying that the first drop is the one that fills the vase? Or is it the second drop? Or is it the last drop? Or is it each and every drop? So when we probe that, we find that there isn't a single one that is responsible, or that is the one that fills the vase. But it is the combination. It is the gathering of all the other factors. All this coming together play a role. So likewise, deduk debu kange nyongwa na gyoyi geji tangbe mayin shin, tamen geji soge mayin jang, tende sobe dedu nyongwa jur, nawa zamdo langdor chawa ang. Likewise, when someone experiences joy and suffering, this is not due to the first instant of their cause, nor it is due the last instant of the cause. So when we experience either joy or suffering, and if we probe the causes, what is the cause that gives rise to? Is it the first instant when we are cultivating the causes? Is that the first instance? Is that the second instance? So if we dissect each instances, we won't be able to find a single instances that we can point to as the actual cause, the solid cause. So that is also joy and pain are felt through coming together of dependent factors. So here we are talking about the importance of dependent arisen or dependent arising. So within this mere appearance, I will observe ethical norms. Same as before. So now the verse 115. Emma mata chipuru nyam gawe nawandela nyingbu machi me wenja yoba taburu nawayi chode sabdes membe tongwar kaas chode sabde membe tongwar kaas so utterly delightful when left unanalyzed. This world of appearance is devoid of any essence, yet it seems as if it really does exist. Profound indeed is the truth, so hard for the weak to understand. This is about what we call in Tibetan nangne mitunba, incongruence between appearance and the reality. So in appearance, there is inherent existence. When we perceive things to our ordinary mind or perception, it appears as if things exist from its own. But in reality, there is no inherent existence. So though things appear as if they were independently and truly existent, they are devoid of independent existence. So it says that the fact, yet it seems as if it really does exist. So here I think it is best if I give this analogy, the illusion-like. So we normally use the term illusion-like. So all the things are illusion-like. We say illusion. We say that because we say the conventional things are illusion-like. We say that because when things appear to us, either it be a form or feeling or whatever it is, they appear to have their own inherent nature, yet they are not inherently existence. So it is like illusion-like. So in an illusion, when a person does a magical illusion, whatever that illusionist does. So normally we have this example where the magician turns some pebbles into a huge elephant. So when we see that, to our eyes, those whose eyes were spelled, had the magic spell, they will see huge elephant in the instead of that small pebble. So when the illusionist does that, so there are three different persons have different notion or perception. So those who are already spelled, those whose eyes had the magic spell, so they will see it as elephant, and sometimes they will also take it as there is a real elephant. But the magician, he knows that this is an illusion. So even though to him also he sees that, but to him, he only sees all this appears as elephant, but deep down he knows that this is not real. And then we have those people who have no, what do you call, who did not have the spell. So those who are not there or something, they wouldn't even see it. They wouldn't even, because they didn't see it, they wouldn't have this thought that there is such a real thing. So likewise, what happened is, when a practitioner meditates on emptiness, and then after meditating on emptiness, and when one is able to have some insight into emptiness, and let's say if the person achieves direct perception into emptiness, so when that person remains in that meditative state, and then if the person comes out of that, at that time the person will not, anyway we will talk that later, but what I'm saying is those who have understanding, insight into emptiness, let's put it this way, those practitioners who have insight into emptiness, so when they see conventional things, to them then things appear as illusion-like. Then to them it is like things are like an illusion, because they already have the insight that things do not exist inherently. They know that things have no intrinsic nature, but they still perceive it. It still appears to them. So they apply their understanding that, okay, yeah, it appears as if there is this intrinsic nature, but it is not. There is no such thing. So it's saying, when you have that understanding, is that it is so amazing when you have that kind of profound understanding. So that one, in order to have that understanding, or that perception, the illusion-like perception, one need to gain insight first, insight into emptiness first. Of course, we say that all things are illusion-like, but of course we can say to ourselves that, oh, it does appear inherently existence, but then there is no, we can say that, but it is not real, because we don't really see it as illusion-like. We are just parroting. We are just repeating what we read in the text. So only when we achieve that direct insight, then we will be able to see everything as illusion-like. So profound indeed is this truth, so hard for the weak to understand. So those who have no understanding in the concept of emptiness, or those who lack understanding, those who has not gained insight into emptiness, will be very hard to understand this profound understanding. Verse 115. Tanin de la nyambar joba na nyabar nawan samya chishik yu, yoba chi yu, mebang chishik yu, yumin tamja kangdong chishin yu. So this one is urging us to engage in meditation on emptiness. Now that we have gained some understanding on emptiness, so he's saying that we need to now put them into practice. We need to meditate on emptiness. So he says, now as I place my mind on this truth in total equipoise, what is there that retains definite appearance? What exists and what does not exist? What thesis is there anywhere of is or is not? So in order to understand this verse, we need to first understand what happens when a person realizes emptiness directly. So once you have the understanding, so you meditate repeatedly. And then, so first understand the earlier understanding, you will gain kind of a understanding based on what you call inferential understanding, based on reasoning. At that level, at that stage, one is still unable to see the emptiness directly. But there will come a time when one can cognize the emptiness directly. So at that time, when the person is in that kind of meditative state, we call this nyamsha. Here I think the word is equipoise, in total equipoise. So what will happen is this kind of mental state is described as chula chusha. That means water dissolving in water. So if you pour water in water, it dissolves in there. You cannot separate the first water, the second water. It dissolves. So what happens is in that mental state, everything is empty. No conventional things appear in that mirror or in that consciousness or in that mental state. Everything, and another word is, we call it rojigpa. Rojigpa means one taste, one flavor. So the person in that meditative state, there's only one taste, only one appearance, or shall it perception. So only everything is empty. So nothing, no manifestation, nothing conventional appears to that mental state. So those we call, ones who have achieved the direct realization into emptiness, we call it Arya beings. So during in that mental state, at that meditative state, so only the emptiness, let's say if the person is meditating on emptiness of form, only the emptiness of form appears, but not the form. Form itself somehow disappears. But then when the person arises from that meditative state, then all the other conventional things started to appear. But at that time, the person will have this illusion-like perception. So that's, we need to first lay that foundation. So now it says, now as I place my mind on this truth in total equilibrium, what is there that retains definite appearance? So meaning that no conventional things appears in that mental state. To that person's eye, no conventional, no forms, no feelings, all these manifestations cease to appear. What exists and what does not exist. So this is a bit complicated. Everything, so basically saying everything will appear empty of its inherent existence. Things, so what exists and what does not exist. Things do not exist objectively, but not non-existent. Existent. So basically, say things exist, but not inherently. So they exist subjectively. So here, what thesis is there anywhere of is or is not? So basically saying that these are the mainly what thesis of Madhyamika is there that subscribe to the to the thesis that things do exist. If things exist, they exist inherently. If things do not exist, they don't exist at all. It says for the Madhyamika thesis, there is no such things. This is like falling into the two extreme. So like those realists, those who are other schools of thought. So for them, everything must exist from its own. So if things do not exist from its own, then they say that things do not exist at all. So they're saying that in the Madhyamika, especially the Prasankika view, there is no such thesis. (16) Yudan yujin chunyi ma chi shing langdor kunje chodan jawa yi nyungme ngangdo lo zhu ma zhu bar lene nena kebu chimbo yorurus. So this is now is kind of a summarizing that, all everything including mind, object, subject. There is no object, no subject, no ultimate nature of things. Free of all ethical norms and conceptual elaborations, if I abide naturally with this uncontrived awareness in the ever-present innate state, I will become a great being. So this is kind of summarizing what we have discussed before. So it is like, so that there's nothing exists inherently. Whether it be the object or the subject, there is no inherent nature. There is no independent identity in everything. So that even the emptiness, no ultimate nature, even the emptiness itself is empty of inherent nature. So that's why we have this emptiness of emptiness. So even ultimate nature, even emptiness itself is empty of inherent existence. So meditating on this, so if we understand this, and then if we repeatedly meditate on this, then we will become a great being. Here, great being is a person who gain direct insight into emptiness. So with that gaining insight, direct insight into emptiness, one will be able to extirpate or uproot the ignorance, and then eventually become Buddha or enlightened. So we are now on the final verse, verse 17. Yudan yujin chunyi ma ji shing. Oh, that's already read. Tedar kunzo chanju semdani tundang chanju semla cheba yi sonyi parje mebar tarjini tunyi pyusun soba topra shows. This is kind of in the form of prayers. So basically, thus by practicing conventional awakening mind and the ultimate mind of awakening, may I accomplish without obstacles the two accumulations and realize perfect fulfillment of the two aims. Remember the bodhicitta, the main goal is to help sentient beings. In order to help sentient beings, one needs to achieve enlightenment. One needs to become Buddha first. So these are the two aims, one of the personal and of the other's goal. So in order to achieve that, we need to achieve the two kayas, the Dhammakaya and then the Rupakayas. Because just Dhammakaya itself will be useless, because Dhammakaya is the mental state, the enlightened mental state. So enlightened mental state without any form cannot help others. So we need a form to help or benefit sentient beings. So these two requires specific causes. So in order to achieve Dhammakaya, we need to cultivate the wisdom aspects of merits, the wisdom aspects of practices. We need to engage in the wisdom aspects of practices. And in order to achieve the Rupakaya, we need to engage in the method aspects of practices, such as bodhicitta, and then all the practice of generosity and so forth. So here is saying that now that we understood, now that we understand the two bodhicittas, conventional bodhicitta and ultimate bodhicitta, engaging in these practices, may I accomplish without obstacles the two accumulations. So as a result of accumulating these two accumulations, may I realize the two kayas. So that's the end of this text. So we have another reason to rejoice that we have persevered through 117 verses, which took us months, but eventually we completed. But as I mentioned earlier, now that we have finished covering, it is time to put that into practice. And before we end the class, I would like to remind that yesterday begins the month of Sagadawa. And normally the month of Sagadawa, of course, it is the meeting of three, or sometimes it's five, sometimes mainly commonly known as the meeting of the three great deeds of Buddha. The month in which Buddha was born, the month in which Buddha achieved enlightenment, and then a month in which Buddha passed away. So this month is the meeting of three great deeds. So in these special days, we always say that merits multiply. So I feel that we should really grab this opportunity. This is where we don't have to put much effort, but we can reap double, triple the benefit. We always complain about, I have no time. When you are working, I understand. We have no time. So now this one, you can still use that limited time, but acquire greater amount of merit. Remember when there are sales, we would go. I don't know about here, but of course here it happens like Black Friday. When there is sale, what do? Some people queue from the night before. Why do we do that? Because that's the opportunity to spend so little but get so much. So this is the time. If we are wise, if we think, if we are true as we think, this is the time. So I'm urging you to really use this, utilize, maximize this opportunity, since we don't have much time throughout the year. So this month, if you are able to really commit some time, then it is worth. It may be worth your whole year of practice in terms of amount of merit. We need merit. At the moment when we try to read or listen to Dharma classes, we have difficulty understanding. But that is because we lack merit. When we have enough merit to support us, then somehow it triggers. Just listening one time, we understand, we gain insight. That happens. You read the same textbook twice, 3 times, 4 times. Each time you gain something different. And then sometimes you have aha moment. That is because now it has ripened. You are supported by the merit so that you are able to now understand. That's why, remember, Lama Tsongkhapa had to go to do preliminary practices. So how can we do that? So you do the usual whatever practices you are doing. But you can increase that. Those who are practicing, let's say, those who spend in your doing prayer or practices for half an hour, you try to increase that by 1 hour, double that time. Those who spend 1 hour, maybe try to increase that by another hour, which makes 2 hours. That's one way to go about. Another way is not increase the quantity, just quality. When we do prayers, sometimes it takes 30 minutes or 1 hour. But some special days, when you do leisurely, when you really reflect and meditate, it takes longer. 1 hour prayer or sadhana, doing sadhana time becomes 2 hours. So that is like improving the quality of your practice. So that's another way to go about. And one important thing I would like to remind is that I have mentioned this before. Remember about the 10 non-virtues. So we all know what the 10 virtuous actions. And we don't engage in all of it. Of course, idle gossip is the one most of us engage in. But the rest, there are many of these which we don't commit. But because we don't have the intention, we don't pledge, we don't receive the benefit. It is such a loss. For how many days we haven't been doing that, but we are not getting the benefit because we didn't make our mind in the morning. For us monks, when we take our vows, all that is included. That's why they say monks, can cultivate more merits. Because even though we don't intentionally don't do it, because of the pledge that we have made when we become monk, it is included in that. So we get the merit, we get the benefit of refraining, of not doing, not committing those non-virtuous actions. So it is good to, first thing in the morning, go through these 10, whichever you think that you can refrain from for that day. And then say, okay, today I will refrain from engaging in this and this and this and this. So end of the day, next day, you have already reaped the benefit of refraining from this. Otherwise, it is a loss. And then, of course, if it's convenient, then take precepts. Normally, the Tibetan community, we do Nyungne practice. But now, of course, with the COVID-19 situation, so it is difficult to do that. But you can always take precepts. Those who have received or taken precepts before, you can take from your altar, in front of your altar. You don't need to receive from a lama. So those you don't have to do on daily, but you can take precepts on special days. Let's say maybe 8th or maybe 15th. So there are these various ways to do. And then of course you can, if your time permits, you can engage in refuge practice, the recitation and prostrations, mandala offering. We have all covered all this, remember? In the 6 preliminary practices, we have covered all this. So you have the resources. You are well equipped to do so. So it is just your, the decision. It's pending your decisions. Once you commit to doing that, you have the resources. So let's maximize this opportunity, and all the best. And we have one more class next Sunday. I'll see next Sunday. Maybe next Sunday I will try to do a summary of the text that we have covered over the months, and then that will be the end of our first semester of this year. Okay, I think I am way beyond our time. So all the best, thank you. And so there is in line with this last slide. So there is this prayer that we always do. So I found that in English, so we can recite that together. So I'm going to display here. Gyawa deye gyawo kun sonama yishi chonzo shing sonama yishi lechung we tamba gunyi tobar sho tagi chini sakbe gyawa de tendan jowa kunla kangbenda gyabara juzun lozan taba yi tembe nyingbu ringdu seje sho jambe bawu chidara kemba dan kundu sambu teyang tejen deda gunje jesu talobeje gyawa deda tamje rabdu ngo tuzun shekbe gyawa tamje ge ngowa kanla chodu ngaba de dagi gewe zawan digun jan sambo chuji rabdu ngowar gis. Thank you.